Under the download section, here's where you can find all of the fonts that are used in the different projects that we have. Now we're not going to use all of them for this particular project, but later on we'll do the rest of them. We're going to download the CC titles for this one since we're using Creative Cloud. I've already downloaded it. I've got it on my desktop. So here's the new fonts for 2013 and beyond. And if you open it up, there's 6 different fonts that we're working with. Notice that all of the against the clock fonts will start with ATC, Agate, Coral, Onyx, so on and so forth. Does that make sense? So you'll be able to quickly and easily find those. But how do you install a font? On a Macintosh system, it's very, very easy to do that. If you open up a font, so for instance, Pyrite. Pyrite comes in bold, bold italic, heavy italic, and also normal. The OTF, that stands for Open Type Fonts. Adobe created its own font system and they call it Open Type, and so this is kind of an industry standard. Another type of font is called True Type, so if you ever see those two, those are what to look for. OTF, if you double click on it, it'll open up a program called Font Book. Font Book is Macintosh I don't know, what's the word? Font collector, font management system, that'd be a good way. It'll give you a preview of it, and all you have to do is click Install Font. Once it installs, it'll show you all of the other fonts that have been loaded up on this computer as well. And if you've got multiple ones, you can select the rest of them, double click, and it will also install each one of those fonts as well too. Now I've gone ahead and installed like Agate, and if I try to do it again, so I'm going to install Agate one more time. This time it gives me an error. It says, hey, there's a problem with this font. In this case, I actually have the font on there twice, and so it's not a major problem. It'll say one minor problem found. I will give you a fair warning. I'm okay with you downloading fonts from the internet and using them in your projects. That's totally cool. That's a professional thing to do. Some fonts that you find online are completely corrupted. They're made by amateurs. They're not really well formed, and some of them have some major problems that can cause errors in your project. Usually Font Book will catch those problems and will say, hey, you may not want to install the font. If you get that error, back away slowly. Does that make sense? All cool? Here's what happens if you open a project that doesn't have a font installed on it. I think Stationery was the one. This will be the final, oh come on, there we go. So I've opened up this Illustrator file, and if you look in top right here, let me see if I can zoom in. Can y'all, oh, it's gonna mess up on your computer. Y'all look up on the overhead. It's messed up on your computer, you can see it, but when I zoom in, you see how it's kind of highlighted in pink? If you ever open an Adobe document and it gives you a font error or there's a problem with it and it highlights your words in pink, that simply means that that font is not installed on your computer. And so it's going to try to find a font that's close to it, or maybe it'll just use a default font instead. If I zoom back out, you can see it's saying, hey, I've got a missing font here, and ATC Coral needs to be installed. And it's actually going to ask me, do I want to find the font, and then I can either go online and find it, or I can try to find it on my computer. That's what's happening when this happens as well. It's a common error, but it's the kind of thing, if you're working on this computer and you move to another computer that doesn't have the font, that will happen. If you send a file to a printer and that printer doesn't have your font, this error will happen. You need to know how to work with it. So let's install Coral at least. I've got it right here. Normal and italic. Double click, install. Now I should be able to open up the stationery file. Totally fine. You can actually see my pink has been, I'll zoom in, it's completely gone and it's loading the font the way God intended. Cool? Okay, so there's that. That's fonts. That's working and installing fonts. One of the first things you will need to do is to go to the website and go ahead and install all of the ATC fonts as well with that. Let's see, here's the next thing. I'll kind of do a quick overview of working with gradient messages. They're going to give you a lemon. You're going to take this lemon, place it into Photoshop, or excuse me, Illustrator. I've been working in Photoshop too long. Place it into Illustrator, and this is the lemon that we're going to be recreating. Like I said, if I was to draw this off, I'm going to do this really quickly with my pen tool, just to quickly vectorize it and then apply a gradient, regular gradient to it. It's not exactly going to give me the results that I want. Here's Mr. Ivy's black lemon. Let's quickly throw on a gradient. Gradient has its own little box to it. And if I wanted, I could try to match the colors to it. But it doesn't really matter what I do. It's still going to look way too flat. I could even try changing my starting and stopping point. What I want is, I want to have a dark edge right here. I want it to get lighter. I want to have a highlight area to work with. Can't do that with a linear or even a radial style of a gradient. But we can do it when we create a gradient mesh, and this is really, really cool. So I've created my object. If I go to Object, down to, there we are, Create Gradient Mesh, it'll bring up a dialog box. And if I turn on Preview, I get kind of a preview of what this looks like. When it says a mesh, y'all think of like a mesh net. It's going to go horizontal and vertical and try to create the outline from one side to the next. And it'll do a pretty good job of wireframing that up. If I need more detail, I can add more rows or I can add more columns to this. Here's the downside. The more detail you have, usually the more work you have to do to change up each little area of color. You'll see what we're doing with this. Of course, the fewer rows and the fewer columns, the less detailed it's going to look. I'm going to keep it, just for simplicity's sake, very, very low. I'm also going to keep my appearance flat. You can go into using that later, and I'll say OK to this. So I've got a gradient mesh applied to it. What can I do with this? In Illustrator, since I'm working with vector, I can tell the object to have each area have its own color assigned to it. I'm going to work with just our regular swatches for now. But if I wanted this bottom corner to be red, I could click on it. I could actually drag that swatch into here, and this is what it's doing. It's filling that with red, and it's gradiating from this area into the other areas as well. Pretty cool? I could do the same thing, not just for a whole area. I can select, with my direct selection tool, one specific point. And so that point, rather than it being red, if I drug on yellow, so now it's going from a red area to yellow area into black. And so essentially what I would need to do is just select each point, and I can colorize it as necessary. Select one area, make it blue, so on and so forth. And when I deselect it, you can see I get a lot more complex, a lot more dynamic kind of grading system. Pretty cool? But what can I do with that? This isn't exactly looking like a lemon. Let's actually make it look like a lemon. I'll undo everything that I've done. Place it back on top. What the book is going to ask you to do is work between two different tools. You've got your direct selection tool, which will allow you to click on one particular point, and you also have a eyedropper tool, and the eyedropper will allow me to quickly select specific colors. You can see wherever I click, since I have this selected, it will change it to that color. And since I have the whole area selected, everything is being selected. But if I select just one point, let's lock this down. Say I selected just that point, and I swapped over to my eyedropper tool and I selected another one, you can see it sort of changed that one from there. Let's select another point. Say this one up here, this one at the top. Grab my eyedropper and I selected yellow, and it will turn that one yellow. And I can work back and forth, selecting one, eyedropper, selecting another, and it will eventually fill in. Here's another cool tip to know. I've got my eyedropper, or excuse me, my direct selection tool. The last tool that I used was my eyedropper tool. If I hold down my, it's not gonna work. Hang on a sec. Oh, wait. There we go. Got my eyedropper tool. If I hold down my command button, it'll swap back over to my direct selection tool. So rather than having to go back and forth selecting both of those, holding Command will swap between my direct selection and the eyedropper tool. Direct selection, eyedropper tool for creating this one. Hello, Mr. Mummer.
Hello, Mr. Rowdy.
Now that'll work out pretty cool, but what I really need to do is I need to be able to see exactly where to pick up these colors. So I'm going to back up even further. In order to see this, I need to see it in the outline mode, not in preview mode. I need to turn it into its vector wireframe. And so here's another trick that you can do in Illustrator to be able to see one thing in outline mode and the other thing in vector mode. I'm going to open up my layers. Got my mesh on top of my picture by itself. If I go up to view and I choose outline, it's going to put everything in outline. I can't see my picture. What I really want to see is just my mesh in its outline as well. So we'll go back into preview mode. I believe if I hold down the option key, click on the eyeball. Oh, wait. Is it option? Which one? Control, excuse me, control key. Click on the eyeball. Oh, Mr. Ivy's working without a net. Hang on a second. This is what I get for not reading over my notes before I came in. Do you remember what it is?
Must be on two different layers, not on the same layer.
It's not on the same layer. Thank you, Mr. Mummer. This is why I love having Mr. Mummer come in unexpectedly. I'm going to put my mesh on a different layer by itself. Let's cut it, make a new layer, paste it into there. Now when I hold down Control, Command, I get an eyeball that looks like this. Did I lose everybody? All cool? Notice that layer 2 is now in wireframe mode. Layer 1, I can now see exactly what's underneath it. I'm going to lock down layer 1 so I don't accidentally select it. Now let's go back to our method. You can use your direct selection tool, select one particular point, use your eyedropper tool, and select a point that's underneath it. I'm actually clicking on the lemon itself. Hold down Command, click on one, click near it, and there. So here, let's do this for a couple of the different points from this. Select it, let go, and click on the lemon. Right now it looks like not much is happening. That's simply because I'm working in wireframe mode. But select it, watch what happens when we go back into our regular mode. There and there. Let's turn this back on. Now I'm getting a lemon that's looking a little bit more like a real lemon. You can see all of the areas that I've turned in gradually going from here. If I do the same, it'll fill in the rest of this. I could go back in later and clean up if I wanted this edge to be a little bit darker. Maybe I would select it, grab my eyedropper tool and select a darker area. And that will darken in that particular one as well. Pretty cool? Okay, any questions on that? I know I went really quickly, I'm sorry for the flub ups on that. But the book will step you through the rest of this. Once you get the lemon created, remember we're making a logo. All logos need to look good, not just in color, but also in black and white or whatever color that it needs to be in. So the second part of this project, you'll be taking your lemon and developing it out into multiple different colors as well. So here's the full color CMYK version at the top. You'll take it into a 2-color, in this case black and yellow, and the final version will be done in just black and white. And these are the type of things that if you're working for a client, they would expect you to be able to create and show as well. Cool? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to y'all, let y'all have plenty of time to work on it. Remember, the first thing you need to do, if you haven't done it